So I'm here with Stop Hate Awareness Programs, David Sumrall. He says people need to be properly outraged about the reality of the situation for January 6th. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, it's good to see you. Nice to meet you too.
You too. I was looking at your documentaries and I am really surprised because I hadn't really paid that much attention. I think I just take what the mainstream media usually says about the January 6th. But when you look further into it, you see a lot of these people were just attempting to exercise their First Amendment rights and petition the government for a redress of grievances. All of them didn't destroy property or go far. So what are your thoughts about this injustice?
Man, I think it's a huge misunderstanding on purpose. I really do. And, we know how politics works. We know it's worked this same way against, other communities for decades. It's no different. It's just us this time. And unfortunately, part of that is, well, it's your turn and we're okay with that. The other part is, the media was quick to jump out and say that we hurt officers, we killed an officer, and most people turn that channel off right then. They can't, and I don't blame them, man. If we had done that, then we wouldn't deserve any support. But the reality is, later they find out that's not true, but they won't revisit it to see what really happened. So you've got over 1,200 arrests. They want 2,000 more. There's an article on stophate.com about all the deaths and suicides, not just one, not just two or three or four or five. There's a death toll to this from the pressure from the federal government, the DOJ, the FBI, and people need to see the reality in that because, any of these people could have bent the knee, so to speak, and said, hey, okay, look, Trump bad, Biden won, no voter fraud, no problem. I'm sorry. And they could have gone home. They could have, taken a plea deal. And they're saying, I'm not going to lie for this government. I didn't go to overthrow anything. I went to peacefully protest, like Trump said, make your voices heard. They went to the west side of the Capitol and there was a peaceful standoff. Okay, maybe they didn't know they weren't supposed to be on the grass because once the signs were down, nobody behind them knew it. And that, you've got thousands of people. They all went down to the front. We just put out a video that shows that down at the front, and you can find it on our X at Help Stop Hate. And what that is before the police attacked the people. And we keep saying that happened, and people say, no, it didn't. Well, go watch the video. This is a scene where everyone's standing down at the front just after 1 o'clock. They pushed through that gate at 12:55. And then at 1 o'clock, 1:01, they're standing down here at the front, and you can hear a guy on his megaphone, just like you said, we're here to redress our grievances. Please don't shoot us. Please don't spray us. Please don't gas us. We mean you no harm. And the police shot into the crowd. And we've documented that 107, Joshua Matthew Black, in the face. All the facts are there. But the media has always, cast these J6ers as a violent, angry mob. But the truth is, yeah, they were angry, but they weren't violent. You conflate the two. People had a right to be upset. They had a right to question. They had a right to redress their grievances. And when they got there, that's what they were doing. And people kind of missed the whole before the police attacked what really happened. So when all you see is the push and the Ray Epps scandal, and then all you see is flashbangs in the crowd. And, for a couple months, people said, we don't know where those were coming from. We think they were firecrackers, from the MAGA crowd. No, it was police flashbangs. We've got all these videos that, the media has tried not to tell anybody for the longest time because it just blows the entire narrative. So basically to say, people don't know who started the fight. People don't know who threw the first punch. Conservatives generally don't start fights. But we defend people, we defend ourselves. We're not going to back down. We never surrender, that kind of stuff. And when you mix those two things, I've called it choreographed chaos from the beginning. If you understaff, underprepare, under-equip, then you're asking for issues when you've got 1 million people walking down the street. So it's kind of intentional on those parts, and proving that's the hard part.
And you're even seeing like, people speak out like Alan Dershowitz, he's a constitutional law expert. I would say the foremost legal mind in this country. And he's saying, like, look, these weren't obstruction of justices.
That's right. That's right. So you've got that 1512 that's really from the Enron days when they were shredding paperwork, and destroying physical evidence. And they've tried to morph that onto these J6ers. Over 300 of them have that 1512 charge, which is worth 20 years in prison for what? Taking a tour of the Capitol. And by and large, by far, you'll see most of the violence is instigated by these police officers. Hey, they were scared. I get it. They were told horrible things about these racist MAGA Trump supporters. They're coming to kill you and eat you and all that. And a lot of people bought into that, man. That's fear. That's ignorance. And we know that is racism as a result of that. They can work both ways. And we see by and large a lot of that happening that day out of fear. And we're not throwing people under the bus. We're just saying this is what happened. And we need to recognize that this whole event is, I say staged, but used to divide the American people, make us hate each other, make us fight each other, make us kill each other. And that's not what anybody really wants, except for the government.
And you've done like, some documentary films, writing history, Bloody Hill, A Thousand Days of Terror. What was the inspiration behind like, documenting these events through film?
Well, so I was there on January 6th. I witnessed a lot. We had a film crew, basically, my friends spread out to film that day because I knew the media would never give us a, proper representation no matter what happened. So we literally went to capture history, and we did some of the deaths. Kevin Greason, another friend, was with Ashley Babbitt when she was killed. There's critical things that happened that day, and I had 3 employees that have all served prison time. Now they're journalists, guys that have worked with me, one for a long time. And, he was in the Capitol for 37 seconds. They wanted to hit him with the 1512 20-year sentence. He was looking at over 20 years in jail for 37 seconds in the
For just
building,
going into the Capitol.
walking in an open door by a line of police, looked inside, people in there walked in. What's going on? Nothing, no signs, no, don't go in there, walked by all these police. And they said, leave. So he'd turn around and walk back out, a few seconds later. And that's it, man. So over 20 years, people don't understand, people that was just walking through, never saw a cop, never pushed a cop, never saw a sign. The signs were gone in the first 5 minutes. The little gates were torn down in the first 5 minutes. They really did a number on people. There were no police out there saying, if you go on the property, you're going to jail. They're supposed to leave people out telling people where to go and what to do. There was confusion because there were permitted events on the Capitol grounds, maybe not on the west side, but nobody knew because the police weren't giving clear direction. You've got 1 million people that have never been to DC before wandering around looking for where Trump's going to meet them because Trump said, hey, I'll be down there with you. We know there's some events, Alex Jones, all these congressmen, there were senators, speaker, whatever. And people are looking for you. You can hear them in the videos. I came to look for the stage. The police maced me. The police shot me with rubber bullets. A lady. I mean, we're publishing these videos every day. And it's not necessarily what the government is releasing. It's the public video. And the public video is much better because it has sound and it's, eye level stuff. And you can see what they experience. So the narrative's changing really fast. It's a good thing.
Right. And you're a primary source because you were actually there. You're the lead January 6th expert, but like, people are gonna say you're biased, but like, the videos which you have access to, that's the clear evidence.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. So early on, some of the lawyers saw that we had collected a lot of evidence, public video. Like I said, we had a vested interest. My employees were looking at jail time and all this. So we're trying to show what really happened as witnesses. Of course, we're biased, but we were there. So it's a bias toward truth. It's not like a bystander that watched it on TV and develops a bias. We were actually witnesses. So it's a lot different. I catch that in court, when I testify in these trials and they try to frame me as being biased. I am very biased. It was a beautiful, patriotic day that we should celebrate. Patriot Day is what we're putting the petitions out for. And And I think if people understood that they did the right thing at the right time for the right reasons, and that the police attacked them and turned the day on its head, and the people have been blamed for it ever since, that's kind of really important. Back to the investigation stuff, these lawyers looked me up and said, why do you have all this stuff? How do you know? And I said, vested interest. We've got people whose lives and futures are on the line. And so they hired me as a video investigator, and it gave me access to the government database. I signed for a license through the DOJ. And so I've been able to look through the government videos for 2 years almost. And
Wow.
it tells the other side of the story. But I've always told people they can keep that video. We use public video in the courts just as much as we use government video in the trials. I submit stuff to lawyers to use, and the public video from cell phones has timestamps, has sound, gets kind of the nuance and the mood, and what's verbally going on. Whereas the CCTV footage is just silent film. And it's like when the select committee took some of that film and put other sound over it to make it sound even more violent than it was, when actually CCTV footage doesn't have sound. So it should have been silent. That's another trick. So they've done this like a fairy tale story from day one. The HBO movie, the Officer Fanone scene that they shot in the West Tunnel, they've used it for their fable, this entire time. We've just tried to take it apart, piece by piece as we go.
Yeah, I know, that the criminal justice system, that there's a lot of dishonesty, and I feel like a lot of times that people, can definitely be railroaded, but when they want the conviction, they'll try to make it seem like you've done something, even if you haven't.
Oh, it's easy. It's easy with these people, nobody's running, nobody's hiding. So they're real easy to find all these years later when the FBI's raid their homes with these military style raids with the flashbangs and the big arm on the front of the truck ready to push the door in. It's a real deal for these people to experience, real sad. And what it is when they have these people with 4 misdemeanors, and they say, look, take a plea deal, and they just want points on the board. They want another conviction. They don't care how they get it. And they say, look, I'm not going to bend the knee. I will fight these 4 misdemeanors. They say, okay, we'll add 2 felonies. Now you're looking at, some serious jail time. They're just trying to coerce these people. And in the beginning, they thought if they drug it out long enough, these guys would fold, like wet cardboard. And they waited too long. Maybe in the beginning, in the first couple of months, these guys missed their families and, missed their dog and, wanted to get back to their lives. But there came a point where they said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to bend the knee. We're going to fight this to the end. We have to expose what they've done to us. We know the truth. We experienced, we saw it. And I got to throw a plug in for the American Gulag Chronicles book, because it tells their stories. It's like the first one is 35 of their stories, basically letters from prison. And it's all available at stophate.com. Everybody can check that. And the second book just came out, Art of Confinement. So it's these guys' expressions, and really well put together by Tim Rivers, Marie Goodwin, and the staff over at American Gulag Chronicles. So there are tools that, that's 100% fundraiser for J6ers families and for their support. But it's an awareness tool, the stories that it tells from their own hand, what they experienced. And, people need to buy them for their libraries. People need to buy them for their coffee tables as gifts for Christmas. All the support goes to the families, but the awareness is invaluable.
And you're also the creator and host of Discussion Island. And I was checking that out before the interview started. And could you talk about what you do on there?
Yeah, it's really cool. Right before COVID hit, I had a friend, Mark Sutherland from Europe, that was at the house, and we were sitting around my kitchen island eating bread and grapes and cheese and watching the girls cook and helping, having a conversation. And I said, man, we should do this as a podcast. We were talking politics and religion and life and just having a good time, and like friends do, but breaking bread, kind of biblical. So I said, man, we should do. He said, what would you call it? I said, we're having a discussion here at the island. How funny, Discussion Island. And he said, oh, that's, brilliant. He's the European accent. Everybody can plug that in. It's really great, British. And so he went home, and we never did anything. Of course, COVID locked everything down.
Right.
And about a year later, I was needing to interview some J6ers to get their stories so I could get them to the public. And I thought, hey, I could do that. And then I was approached to have like a radio show. And they said, well, what would you call it? And I said, well, Discussion Island. And what's funny, I got to tell this, when I bought the website, I went ahead and reserved it when I had that conversation, $20, whatever. And I thought, why is this not taken? It's kind of a cool name. And, if you're having a discussion on it, so let me look up the history. I don't want this to be some kind of crazy site, and so I looked it up, and there's a story from Scotland back in the day, hundreds of years ago, whatever. There was the Isle of Discussion, where they would take people and drop them off to work out their differences with some whiskey and some cheese, and say, we'll be back and get you in a couple of hours or a couple of days, however long it takes. Duke it out, fight it out, have it out, speak it out, but you're going to fix this. And it was the Isle of Discussion. So I thought, it could be that place to have some of those conversations that aren't comfortable, that aren't, but to be trapped in one place together and know. So the whole pretense was to have it live at my house at the kitchen island and invite guests over and have them bring something for the meal as well, and shoot it, and do the whole show in that context, and then cut to Dessert Island and do the after show where you get a little deeper and a little more into it. It's just COVID shut it down early on, and then as J6 turned into what it is, there is no time I could have done something schedule wise. You see, I'm very sporadic with what we put out on the island, and it's just a matter of time. I wish I had more time to talk to more people, but I think the importance was to get those January 6th stories out, before anybody was doing it. It was a kind of risky thing. I got a lot of heat from a lot of people for talking about what was not supposed to be, set out in public. So it was important to them so they could get the media exposure. So that was kind of, we were one step in the process, I guess, to find the people, get their stories going. I would farm that out to all my media friends, and they would take it from there and hopefully get more national coverage. But it's just a community effort. It really has always been, with the whole J6 family. We were forged through this fire, and people don't understand that we would have never met each other. There's some real patriotic, God-fearing warriors in this fight that we would have never known. And so I'm grateful for that. And I do see, more and more recently, more light at the end of the tunnel, because they can't stop the truth, forever. And we've had it. The community's had it. We've tried to get the media to cover it. But, it's like everything else, brother. It's been, hijacked for the election, and always has been. They've put the brakes on this.
Yeah, we
From
live
day
in
one.
such polarized times. I go on social media and people are arguing about everything. How can we stop the divisiveness and find common ground, to rebuild and make America I'm not gonna say great again because people
Yeah,
saying I'm a Trump supporter.
you'll get canceled, and that's the thing. We've got to want to, and right now nobody wants to. It's popular, and it's trendy, and it's cool, and it always has been since what, the 80s, when they said it's funny to cut somebody down fast, it's funny to have a quick comeback, and your mom jokes, anything that started those trends, and we think that's cool. Look at television. The man is usually not the breadwinner or the leader in the family. It's usually the mom, and she's making jokes about the dad, and really belittling. So there's so many issues, of course, in the family unit and everything. We see these, but like we said in the beginning, man, it's just our turn. It's the same suits, the same judges, the same attorneys holding these charges over people's heads. And look, the J6ers are telling me, we're meeting other guys in the prisons that aren't J6ers, and they have the same story. Yeah, look, man, I had some weed, but I didn't have that much weed.
Right.
And these guys were looking at 20 years. So I pled for 4, and they still got me for this, but I had to. And so many of these J6ers, man, hey, look, when you've had enough and you can't afford it and you can't go on and you're not getting that public support or that church support or that community support because everybody's been fed this line that you're a criminal and you got to cut your losses and take that plea, you can't fault these people. But
Right.
when you look back at the numbers, well, we've had, 600 pleas. Yeah, it's either that or kill themselves like our other suicide victims. So, I mean, there's a breaking point, and the government knows which buttons to push. They know who's in deep water. They know who's financially hurt, and they know your circles. They know your influence and your friends and your support. and they're using this against people every single day with the Patriot Act, with the 702s, with everything that we see, and then charging people with 1512s for staying in the velvet ropes, or not going 20 feet in a building for 37 seconds. I mean, that's the level that people have been, I call it the media curtain, because it's so real what's happening to these people that are suffering and dying. I mean, that's founding fathers material to be able to say, I'm not going to bend the knee. I'm going to take this to the death if I have to, and I'm not going to give up any ground. I'm going to stand and fight for what's true and what's right. It's a hard position, and I couldn't be any more proud of the people that have, stayed the course, and those that fell out. Hey, I don't have any ill will. They're still telling the stories of what happened to them in that, and that's what's important for the public to hear.
Being someone who is a Christian and seeing like, the decline of morality in society, we see like, just like the popularization of like whoredom, in our music and our media culture. Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Hey, it's everything, and it's systematic. Look, I mean, there's the old Paul Harvey thing. If I were the devil, what would I do? It's the same as Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. I mean, how to take down the church, the media, the politicians, society. It's systematic and methodical. And unfortunately, Christians, for one, have set by, it's the church's fault. I'll go ahead and say it because I'm the church. So I'm talking to myself and everybody else. We didn't do what we could have, should have done. Instead of voting to turn the other cheek, we could have voted our faith and our conscience, our convictions, and said, hey, we can't allow, this is our road to, this is our society, and some of these things are just wrong for anyone. Look at abortion. How do we ever let something like that get so out of control? So, the music is I call it the 3 M's, music, media, and movies, because there are 3 different ways that they program us, tell us what's cool, tell us what to do, how to live our lives, what our goals and aspirations should be. It's like sports figures, but where's the example in the church? Because those guys aren't leading the way they should lead either. I think the church has it all wrong. I think COVID was a great example where God kind of said, okay, enough of that. That model's broken. So we're going to do something a little different. But I think it's that revival moment that people have to really say, and it's unfortunately the same as throughout history, that 3% supported by the 6% or whatever it is. Unfortunately, the Bible's clear about 2 things. Many will be deceived. That means most. And my people die from lack of knowledge. It doesn't say we save them. So there's definitely, and we've experienced a death count, and it's not going to get better. We're going to have to save as many people as we can as Christians, as doing kingdom business. That should always be the main focus. But I think in the day and times that we live in, the expediency of that message has to change. It's the same, but that should be our focus. And trying to stress that to people in a day like this is hard because of the infighting, because of the popularity contest, because of the likes and clicks, and trying to be cool or trying to be whatever. And it takes away from the reality of where we live so much. That's that make-believe movie world people talk about. That is so far from the truth. If you don't believe me, just go step out in front of a bus and see what happens. It's not going to be some movie star moment. It's reality, and it hits you like that. So, I appreciate that question, because faith, roots, Christianity, morals, the 10 commandments, these are important things that, we have taken out of the schools. We've tried to take out of society as much as we can to have, any society without morals is lost. And we're as close to Rome, I believe, that we could be. I've said before, in the days of Noah, it was really, really bad for God to say, hey, I got to reset this thing. And I can't say that we're in much better place than the days of Noah. So I don't know where we are on that biblical timeline, pre, post, mid. I really don't think it matters. I think what matters is the moment, where you are, your relationship with Christ first, and doing what he asks us to do.
Man, as a father, of 3 children, 2 girls, man, like one of the things I would really like to see is porn taken off the internet. Senator Mike Lee, he had proposed like last year the obscenity law bill. And I think like, that seems very reasonable. Like I don't see like a reason for like adult film being on the internet.
No, I totally agree, man. There's a lot of things like that. And we're seeing that. I mean, it's a slow roll, but it's a long game. and people are playing it. Look at the books, the curriculum in the schools. You know, how do people get over us and what our kids get to see? And it's pornography, just like you're talking about on the internet. I mean, it's no different. Teaching them about, you know, all the different sexual deviancies, I guess you would say, because hey, it is what it is, man, and people need to be realistic about that. But there's just always going to be that element, man, and I don't know how to remove it. I just and I don't think that's really the purpose. I think our purpose is to be that light and to try to influence people and just say, hey, you know, there's reasons, and a lot of it we just have to admit mental illness runs amok. And look, we need to bring some institutions back. We need to help some people. Look at the prison system. There's a lot of guys in prison that need to be in an institution and seeking help, you know, or getting help, more than being, you know, further terrorized, I guess, by a system that it's foreign to me. They don't understand it's not the right way to do things, and yet
Yeah.
for
And
whatever reason,
drug addiction too is like,
it's
we
insane.
have the most incarcerated people in the world, which is just absurd. It feels like, people aren't getting rehabilitated.
No,
Like, the recidivism rate is like, really high. So like obviously like what we're doing isn't working, but also like I feel like, it seems like, that it's an economic component to, the prison industrial complex,
always,
being able
always.
to like to continue this because like, if you wanted to ruin America, like, people stop doing crime, you know.
That's the family unit. Once again, you take the father out of the house, you put him in jail, you put him on all these restrictions and probations and fees, and you know, you take what little bit of money they had in the first place, and it's a matter of putting them in the system. Look, unfortunately, police aren't here to serve and protect; they're here to process and to prosecute. You know, and that's really how things have changed in Mayberry, Texas, or Mayberry, wherever you are. It's not that way. People learn that at the Capitol. You know, those are not local policemen, and they expected a different kind of relationship with them, and they were, you know, sorely shocked and mistaken when that didn't happen. Then they go home and they don't trust their police anymore because their police let them be kidnapped by the FBI. This is a breakdown of that relationship with law enforcement for Americans as much as it is in that family unit, because you take dad away. They're doing the same thing to these J6 families. And I swear it's the same suits, same lawyers, same stuff, same judges, same thing that happened to other communities for decades. It's time that we all fix this thing together. It's a huge issue that, you know, and I think Trump did some good stuff, First Step Act and some other things for,
Right.
you know,
He
proof.
nominated black generals like
Yeah.
first.
Well,
Yeah.
just proof, you know, and that's, it doesn't have to be a lot. It's more than anybody else ever did, you know, and that's the proof, you know, when you go from calling them super predators to given, you know, different breaks for prison sentences that were ignorant in the first place because of that whole mentality of the government before. So it's like they feed off their own problems in the government. They create them, they use them. It's no different than COVID, no different than January 6th. Is for control, power, more money, more surveillance over Americans. And you know, where are we headed with a totalitarian state like that? I don't think people understand that their freedoms are gone. You can't use the First Amendment in your defense if you're a J6er. I was here to protest. I was here to redress my grievances, exercise my free speech. You can't say those things in these because they want to interject that you were here to overthrow our fragile democracy. And that's where you have to start. And hey, they've got video of you being there that day, so you're guilty. If that's what they say and that's the guidelines for what you're going through, that's literally what these people are experiencing. And it's way beyond injustice. And I hope that at some point they're able to turn around and sue the pants off all those people for all their holdings and their money and all their stocks they made as Congress. And I don't mean sue the government, I mean sue the people that did it to them, because the government doesn't need to pay for this. The taxpayer does not need to, but somebody does. So that prisoner exchange program where we take the J6ers, you know, we need to talk about some of that stuff.
Yeah. 2024 election is quickly approaching.
Yeah.
Trump will likely win the Republican nomination. It's very likely that he will win the presidency. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a horrible time for America. Either way, as many people have said, and I agree, no matter who wins at this point, nobody's going to trust it either way. I think that if you listen to some people on the left that have said, I think Schumer had said it not too long ago that when you lose faith in your elections, that's the beginning of the end. You know, Obama was saying before, when you lose faith in the systems and the, you know, procedure, everything, that's the beginning of the end. They want the beginning of the end. They want this to blow up. They want civil war. We don't. That's not our purpose. And it's time for people to come together. And I've said this one 100 times too. I love it. You know, the red ants and the black ants in the jar get along just fine until somebody shakes the jar, but the one shaking the jar is the government. And when those ants all figure out who's shaking the jar, that's the moment I look for. And it's not to overthrow our, it's to throw the criminals out of our government. We have the best constitution, the best laws, the best of everything. Might need some tweaking here and there, some fixing, go back to the basics. But for the most part, nobody wants to overthrow our government. They want to throw the criminals out and put it back in the hands of the people and let us do what's good for us and for America, and not for all these bleeding heart, special interest, liberal, you know, lobbyist groups and different countries and all that. We need to take care of us and our homeless and our vets and our kids and our families and our different communities. And really, I think that Civil War thing is being pushed. I mean, look at the movie that just came out about all that.
Yeah, the
I mean,
Obama produced movie, like, yeah.
predictive programming 101. Don't fall for the bait, people. And go watch Bloody Hill if you want my take on that. The very end of it, where I go all crazy, and the very end of that one really explains at least my viewpoint and my friends about Civil War. So that's
Yeah,
good.
like I was looking on my timeline today, and they were saying like how Mark Zuckerberg is building an underground bunker in, like, Hawaii. Like, I thought, like, what is he doing that? What does he know that we don't? Like, because I'm sure, being a billionaire that has like access to information at the highest levels, like he's not just doing that for no reason.
Well, he saw what the energy weapons did to Hawaii last time, and he's like, "Oh, so you got to get underground if you're not going to." No, I don't know, any of that stuff. I'm not sure, but yeah, these guys watch him, man, and just listen to him. Actions always speak louder than words. They've been saying some crazy, crazy stuff for a long time, but their actions are even crazier, man. Blocking the sun, doing all the stupid things with mosquitoes and with our food and meat grown in a lab. Are you kidding me? Killing our cows. Look at our poultry or chickens. And I mean, it's disgusting. And vaccinating wild animals, trying to spread this stuff in the deer population. I mean, what is wrong with Americans when we don't understand what Trump said in his inauguration? I'm giving the power back to the people, but we don't know what that feels like in our hand. We don't know how to wield that power. We don't know how to use it yet. And we've got to get our sea legs pretty quick and figure out what that feels like, or this continues. And it doesn't have to be a violent thing. That's not what we're advocating. We just need to find a peaceful resolution and a way to end this madness. I mean, literally look up terrorism in the dictionary. It's the unlawful use of violence or intimidation, especially against civilians for political aim. That's the definition of our government. People on both sides need to wake up and learn that real fast.
And David Sumrall, Stop the Hate. Thank you so much for coming by. Like, it was very educational. I think, like, anybody can agree, like, and stuff, that people shouldn't be, like, intimidated because of their political viewpoints.
That's
I
right.
think, we're seeing that, like, all the time, like, where just because like people have different political views, and now people are going to jail for it, and that's just wrong. So
Well, there's two things let me leave you with. Stop hate is an acronym. It's start turning off prejudice, heal attitudes through education. And that's pretty simple stuff. We need to start having conversations, a little hard, a little difficult, but not be scared of each other. That's where the unknown is the fear. If we talk this stuff out, we don't have to agree about everything. We don't have to agree about much, other than we're Americans. We want better for our kids and our families, and we don't want to hurt each other. That's a pretty good place to start. We got a lot more in common. But secondly, stophate.com. Just if people will go there, go to the J6 tab and click on that, look at some calls to action, how you can help these J6ers through prayer, letter writing, different things. Some cost money, some are free. So, whatever level of commitment you can give, get passionately involved in these people's lives and try to help them out as much as you can. I would appreciate it. I know they appreciate letters as much as anything. So if people can do that, and man, it's been great to meet you and chat. I hope we can do this again real soon.
most definitely, it was great talking with you, David. Stophate.com. I appreciate you.
Thank you.